creating a culture of love.
You know, the truth, bro, was I was more interested in playing soccer.
Well, we're actually completely out of control because there's very few things we could actually control in our lives.
As souls, we incarnate into this human experience, and we meet our parents.
Oh, you think love's going to change the world? You're going to paint it everywhere.
I would break things in the lobby of my father's church.
Kute Blackson. They say the mindfulness guru, billionaires go to for advice. That's a really cool title. Inc. magazine said that. But what interests me most about you is I got to see you speak for a quick 10 minutes, but it was a very powerful 10 minutes. And you've been inspiring audiences since the age of 8 with a mission to awaken, inspire people across the planet to access their inner freedom, live authentically, and fulfill their true purpose. What does it feel like to be thrown on a stage in front of 3,000 people at the age of 8 years old?
You know, the truth, bro, was I was more interested in playing soccer. And it wasn't like some special thing. At least it didn't feel that way in the moment. I would break things in the lobby of my father's church. My father had 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa.
Wow.
Hundreds of thousands of followers. So he was a big deal. So his kid breaking things in church was not good for him and his reputation.
Yeah.
His church in London was about 5,000 people every Sunday. And so they basically kidnapped me, put me on the front row and said, you're going to sit here, put 2 bodyguards next to this 8-year-old naughty kid, and I would fall asleep. And so, you know, African services are 5 hours singing and clapping and celebrating. But for an 8-year-old kid, I just wanted to play soccer. And so one Sunday, I get a nudge and they say, your father wants you to speak and he's calling you on stage. And so I'm half asleep and I run up on stage and I didn't really know what happened. I just stood on stage, looked around, you know, you're very innocent as a kid. And things just started to come out of my mouth that I really didn't understand. And I know 20 minutes, 50 minutes later, everyone was in tears, people were clapping. But that began my speaking career, but it also began my relationship with this kind of connection beyond myself, beyond my logic, beyond my personality. Because whenever I would speak, and I started speaking every month, every 6 weeks, my father would throw me on stage, and I hated it because I never knew when it was going to happen.
Yeah.
But when it happened, it was as though I disappeared, and some deeper intelligence just came through. And so it was like just getting myself out of the way and dissolving. And stuff happened, and so it was a real blessing.
Yeah,
you know, it was a real blessing.
So you were just able to tap into source.
Yeah.
But the one thing you said right there is getting out of my own way. I think if we can all get out of our own way, we have the answers in front of us. We have the opportunities in front of us. We have the path in front of us. Yeah. What do you think is the main reason keeping us from getting out of our own way, from being stuck in our old ways or creating limiting beliefs?
You know, I think it's a big question. Let's just start with one level of it. I would say it's our conditioning and our ego that gets in the way. And our ego, which really is our perceived sense of what we believe ourselves to be based on past experience, name, body, form, childhood conditioning, beliefs, you know, stacks of beliefs, thought forms, ideas that then crystallize, that we hold on to, that become our identity, you know, memories from the past. And that gets reinforced by life, society, religion, school, education system, those around us. And the degree to which we end up holding onto a sense of identification to who we think we are and these belief systems is the degree to which we are not free, the degree to which we are sort of locked into a prison of persona, a prison of ego. And as human beings, we become so conditioned to believe that we are this ego structure, for a sense of safety and self-preservation and comfort and love, validation, and approval, that attachment, that sense of identification is part of what gets in the way of the flow, and the degree to which we are identified and an ego is the degree to which we are not free. And from that place, we really believe that we are this person. We really believe we are this persona. We really believe that what we believe is fact, is true, is reality.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the ego, what we mistakenly perceive ourselves to be, is not who we are. The ego is not even real. It's not a thing. An iPhone is a thing. A pet chihuahua is a thing. The ego is a process. It's a process of identification. It's a process of, like a bicycle is a thing. Pedaling is a process. And so the thing is, the job of the ego is to protect you from getting hurt, like you were hurt when you were 5 and you were 7 and you were 10 and you were 15. And so this is the job of the ego. The ego is really a reaction to things that happened that we learn to adapt and develop certain patterns to function and survive. The job of the ego is to protect you from getting hurt. The job of the ego is to reinforce its identity and existence. And so one of the ways ego does that is, if I can control everything and make everything, if I can control you, and all of life and my pet and my kid and my wife and the government and the web, then I'm going to be safe. And so we attach and we hold on, and control is often a pattern of the ego. So in trying to control everything, we often end up being controlled and anxious and full of stress and unhappy, because the truth is, when our happiness and our joy and our freedom is dependent on things being a certain way, and the truth is, how often in life are things exactly the way we need it to be, and the degree we need things to be the way we need it to be is often the degree to which we're going to suffer. But ego seeks to control as a way of trying to feel safe and secure. And so one of the ways we also get in our own way from this ego patterning is we want to be the doer, the one that is doing everything. Because if I, this illusion of what I believe myself to be, if I am the one that's making shit happen, if I'm the one that's doing, if I'm the one that's like making life, manifesting everything, I must be real. I must exist. And so the drive of the ego is to preserve its identity. So when we talk about getting out of the way, when we talk about flow, when we talk about surrender, it sounds good, but for the ego,
freaks out.
What we perceive ourselves to mistakenly be is terrifying, because for the ego, it feels like a death. It feels like, shit, if I get out of my own way, then how will anything happen? If I get out of my own way, then I'm gonna get hurt. Things won't happen. Then maybe I'm gonna die. And so it's natural that change, breakthroughs, change, transformation, reinventing oneself, surrender, which we can get into, is terrifying to the ego, and ego resists. The resistance to letting go and surrender is so scary. So ego resists. Resistance is the ego's mechanism of trying to hold on to its sense of self. And that's why we get in our own way. So the flow is always happening. The flow it's life, the nature of existence, the intelligence is always happening. We don't make the flow. We just get in the way of the flow because of our conditioning. So look, as children, you have a beautiful kid, right? I mean, gorgeous kid, right? They're just pure beingness. They are the flow. You know, as children, we were all in touch with the flow. As children, we were all in touch with our own innate essence. We were in touch with our divine essence. We were truly surrendered. Surrender is our natural state. Being in flow is our natural state. A child is in flow. They're going, they're moving. They're not analyzing why and why not and calculating. They're just pure being.
Yeah, that's it. They
That's
are
it.
purely being.
Pure being.
When I watch him, I'm like, what are you doing?
Just being.
He's just being ready.
Being. Nothing needs to be a certain way. They're just being what they're being.
Yeah.
And so what the hell happened to us? We were in
That's
touch
the
with this
question.
flow. And then as souls, we incarnate into this human experience. And we meet our parents. God bless them, right? Colombian, Ethiopian, Japanese, African, British, right?
Yeah.
My wife is from Brazil, so this whole combination. We incarnate into this human experience. And now we meet our parents. We're born into a and they're just doing the best that they know how to do, based on their parents and their grandparents and their conditioning. And so we're born into a preset pattern of generational conditioning that is already pre-framed, preset. So as these free, bright, flowing, surrendered beings, we incarnate into this human experience. Maybe dad is crazy. Maybe mom is an alcoholic. Maybe they're fighting all the time. Maybe there's pain, abuse, trauma, dysfunction. Maybe they were great people. Or maybe dad wasn't around. Maybe we were abandoned, but maybe they were great people. But, no one's perfect. So they didn't know how to meet our emotional needs. And that was painful. So two things happen. The first thing is we learn all sorts of strategies, most of which is unconscious, to shut down, disconnect, not feel. Layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of unprocessed feelings begin to sort of cover up our true light. And we erect walls, defense mechanisms around our heart as a way to protect ourselves from feeling the pain of mom not being there or dad not being able to meet our emotional needs, because that's too painful. So we just disconnect, go into our brain, go into our mind, overanalyze, figure everything out, disconnect from our bodies as a survival mechanism. And now this survival strategy of how we become disconnected, which is really a form of control, we hold on to and we live that way our entire lives. And that's where the creation of ego starts coming into play. And then we develop a role. Who do I need to be in order for mom to love me? Who do I need to be to be loved by dad? If I'm kind, if I'm sweet, if I'm nice, if I'm a good boy, if I'm a good girl, if I get all A's, then, so we develop a role, a mask, a persona, and we hold tightly. So we become conditioned to be who we think we need to be in order to be loved. We get conditioned into a pattern, into a shape, a person that we think, and we often say, this is just who I am.
And I am who I am.
I am who I am. I'm just independent. I'm just laid back. I'm just, not artistic. I'm just whatever it is. And we're so sure about this version of ourselves that we've been conditioned to be. It's kind of a calcification of our consciousness that's been so conditioned to become this patterned persona that we believe ourselves to be, that we're now stuck. That stuckness is, in that holding is ego, which is what prevents us from really, truly being in the flow. So we have to be willing to recognize first that we are conditioned, because most of us, we're not aware that we're conditioned. We think that who we are is who we are. And then we keep recreating our life and relationships and patterns. But the thing is, the ego, it doesn't want to change. The ego wants everything and everyone around to change, but it doesn't want to change. It wants to be in control for good intention. It wants to be the doer. It wants to be the one. But look at this. Was it Jesus? Not to get religious here, but spiritual conversation. Jesus was a miracle worker, and he gave us a code. When it came to his miracles, he said, it's not I that does the work. It's the Father that does the work through the Father. Intelligence, consciousness, beingness, the divine, whatever label, source,
whatever works.
He didn't say, yo, it's me. Look how great I am. I'm the man. I'm Jesus. I fed the 5,000. There was no I. He wasn't in the way. He's like, it's not I that does the work. It's the Father, source energy that does the work through me. And I think that's the magic. And for me, that's why surrender is the key.
Yeah.
I mean, I could keep going, but...
No, that's good. There's so much there, and I want to simplify it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So ego is the code within the operating system, make us believe that we're in control, but we're actually completely out of control because there's very few things we could actually control in our lives. And then we get so rigid at this. You know, as a kid, I remember I used to go to school and I'd share things. And then my mom would say, we don't talk about what happens at home at school. So then I'm like, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to desensitize. And layer over layer. I dated a girl. I was too sensitive, so I became less sensitive. You're not macho enough. Men don't cry. Less sensitive. Start putting up more and more walls. So like everything you're saying, I could put stories and mechanisms and experiences that led me to the point of where I was so depressed and unhappy with my life that I had to go back and break something. And it was breaking free. Yeah. But also I wasn't broken. Yeah. I was conditioned. We're the sum of our experiences. One of the things I always say, because sometimes people say, oh, I wish I never dated that person. I wish I never did that. But you wouldn't be who you are if you didn't do that. Yeah. It's realizing what's the lesson from that. And the other thing you said about doing, it's even more difficult for men because men are naturally doers and fixers. So it's like, it's this eternal struggle and battle of like, let's keep doing the thing. We forget that we have to be it. Then we do it, then we have it. Yeah. So that was beautiful. Yeah.
We have to be willing to recognize that we are conditioned and question our conditioning. Who am I? Do I really believe this? The thing is, questioning ourselves is terrifying for the ego because that feels like, that feels like a death. And who would I be if I didn't believe this, and this, and this, and this? I'm not enough. I'm unworthy. Nobody loves me. I'm not valuable. Men are this way. Men are that way. And we hold on to that for a sense of like, this is who I am. And at least I know who I am. And even if it's suffering, at least I know the level of suffering that I'm experiencing. And it's often safer that way. And so it can be scary to really question, what do I believe? Do I really believe this? Is this really my truth? Or is this just what I've been programmed and taught to believe by society and media and parents and religion and by everyone around me? And so I think that's a step.
And am I believing it for me, or am I believing that for you to believe that that's who I am? Yeah. Right? It's like we're actually walking around and putting on this persona. You know, some of the things that I was thinking is like that's when we learn to manipulate. That's when we learn to put on masks. That's when we learn to become the great actors that we are, instead of just being who we're supposed to be.
Let's get into it.
So, you know, as men, sometimes we want to be right, and we want to win, and we want to compete. And I've learned now differently, but it's always about proving everyone wrong that I can do it, or let me kick, scream, and claw my way to the top, and I don't care who I hurt. When the truth is, do we want to be at the top alone, or do we want to be at the top with everyone else? And there's plenty to feed the world. And when it comes to surrendering, sometimes the thought is, am I giving up? Am I conceding? Am I quitting? Am I losing? Yes. So what is it about surrendering, or how do you surrender where we're not thinking that it's about conceding or quitting or losing? Because if we really look at it, and for some of us that have started to do the work, we know it's a position of power.
Yeah, I really feel that surrender is the most important thing that we can do as human beings. That surrender is the most powerful thing that we can do. I think that surrender is the real process of life itself. And it's not really a question of if we're going to surrender. It's really about how we're going to participate in the process of life. That is a process of surrender, because most things don't necessarily go according to plan and go your way. The moment we're born, we get older, we begin to age. By the time we turn 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, hair falls out, things happen, the body, does what it does. At least when we die, we will have to surrender whether we like it or not. And so it's not about if, it's about how am I going to participate in the process of life. And so for me, life is a process of surrender. But I really feel, and this is through my lived experience, that surrender is the most powerful thing, that surrender is the real key to the next level of our lives, that surrender is the real password to freedom and peace, that surrender is the real secret to true limitless manifestation, that if you look at the really, for those that might be, surrender's weak, if you look at the really great ones, look at Jesus, look at Buddha, look at Gandhi, look at Mother Teresa, look at, Mandela, look at Martin Luther King. These were no wussies. These were no weak people. Look at Bruce Lee. Look at Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
At some point, these great figures, these humans, they all got to the point in their lives where they had to surrender to a purpose that was bigger than themselves. They got to the point where they had to let go and surrender to God, the universe, the divine, to that deeper intelligence, to that deeper impulse that was seeking to express through them. And maybe it wasn't what they wanted and what they thought. And I'm sure Mandela didn't sit around setting a goal list and a goal plan saying, yeah, I really would like to spend 27 years in prison. That would be a great strategy.
Yeah.
I'm sure Gandhi didn't have a plan, yeah, I want to spend, months in prison and get beaten. I'm sure that wasn't his plan. But in that surrender, I think all of them, they were able to transcend their human limitations and tap into another dimension of life. And that's when, life, God, this innate intelligence that is breathing us and living us, manifests through us. And I think that's when the magic and the miracles happen, because now we are creating from source. We're creating in alignment with the universe, not just our limited ego's perception and projections. And so, yeah, just to clarify, I think there is a misconception in our culture that surrender is weak, that surrender is passive, that surrender is giving up, that if you surrender, you're going to get left behind, that you're going to be a doormat, you're going to be taken advantage of, you're going to be a victim, that if you surrender, you won't manifest your goals, dreams, and desires in this rat race of life, that if you surrender, you're going to get less. I'm actually saying if you really understand the true essence of real surrender, not as a passive thing, but as an active thing, that the great ones all demonstrated. What if you didn't get less, but you got more, more than you could even have projected and imagined with your limited conscious ego understanding? To me, surrender is a letting go of control, or I should say the illusion of control. Surrender is when we stop trying to force and manipulate life and relationships to fit our limited idea of what we think it should be and how we think it should look. It's when we let go of the idea of who we think we should be and how we think life should be. It's when we take the limitations off of life and the universe and we say, I'm open, I'm available, I'm receptive. We allow life to lead us. And I think that's when the magic happens. And so there's the old ego. To me, it takes tremendous courage to truly surrender.
Oh, yeah.
Truly, it takes more strength to surrender. And so the old ego-based model that I've seen for many years has been pushed by society and even in self-help and personal development is this kind of know what you want, get clear on what you want, write it down and push, make it happen, go. And I think it's fine to set a goal, to write it down, to have an intention. But what I found is what you create from the lens of the ego will always be limited. Because when we create from the ego which is conditioned by past experience, the ego is not able to see the total highest possibility of our life's unfolding. We just want, from the perspective of the ego, what we want: that car, we want that partner, we want that career, and we just want what we want and we want it now, but we don't realize that sometimes you might get what you thought you wanted, only to realize when you achieved it, what you thought you wanted was just what you thought you wanted based on who you thought you were. But if you're not in touch with who you truly, authentically are, your unconditioned true nature, then often your goals might be projections of unmet needs. Yeah. I wasn't okay, so if I can get that house, that car, then I'm going to finally be okay. So for me, part of the path of surrender is a different question. And the question I invite people to ask is not, what do I want? What do I want? This limited sense of I, self that we talked about. The question is a bigger question. It's more about, I kind of call it soul setting, not goal setting. And it's more about what is it that what is it that my soul is seeking to express? What is it that life is seeking to express through me? What is it that the universe is seeking to express through me? What is it that God is seeking to manifest through me? What is the deepest truth, the deepest integrity, the deepest impulse of what life is seeking to live and create through me, and to allow ourselves to open to that and be used by life, as a vehicle. And I think when we truly do that, then we can feel into what is true. Then we can align our ego, our personality, our goal setting, our planning, our money, our strategy, our business plans, our resources, in sync with our soul's deepest truth, which is not just a conditioned idea. Then we can take action. So surrender doesn't mean you just sit there and do nothing. It's like you take action on the wave, on the right wave, on the authentic wave, on the deepest truth. Then you take action. It might mean you work harder than you've ever worked. It might mean, Gandhi worked. Mother Teresa worked. Mandela, they worked. They weren't sitting around doing nothing. They worked because they were working in alignment with their soul and for a purpose that was bigger than themselves. But the key is when you take action, as a part of surrender, you take action 100% without attachment to the outcome. And that's the key. You take action without that attachment to the outcome, because sometimes we take action, we get so attached to what we think we want and that outcome that we don't realize we're ineffectively, we're limiting life. And so you give 100%, trusting that the goal is not always the goal. We might perceive it as the goal from our current level of consciousness, but sometimes the goal is just the necessary evolutionary carrot, the necessary puzzle piece to take us on a journey to grow and evolve. That even though we thought that relationship was the one, or we thought that goal was the one, it really wasn't. It was just the journey that we had to go on in order to grow, to evolve, so that we could develop the mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, energetic, soulful muscle to become the person that was capable of holding the real vision that maybe is over here. But when we get so attached to, it's got to be this person, or it's got to be that thing, it's got to be this idea, this business, then that's when we get in our own way and we end up limiting this deeper intelligence of life. And I really feel there is an intelligence of life.
No, I agree. There's a couple of things there. I'm going to take a few steps back, and then I've got the next point to go forward with. Is you're saying that surrendering is like relinquishing control, and I'm looking and hearing what you're saying, and I was thinking ahead of time, surrender is control, because we're taking choice, we're taking action. So it's one of the things we're choosing to surrender, and that's a choice of control. And then whatever happens, because what we're thinking is we're in control and things are just happening around us, but we're not really in control. So I'm thinking that it's a choice of control, strength, courage, grace, and vulnerability. So that's beautiful. And the next thing is like, we want the car, and I've been there in my 20s. We want the car, the house, the girl. Nothing's wrong with it. To me, and the way I reframe it now is like, I was chasing money for money's sake. Now money's a happy byproduct. We need it to live. I like it. I'm not allergic to it, but it doesn't define me. It's what comes from the bigger purpose, from the meaning for what I've surrendered to. But with that being said, what is the cost, right? What is the cost of getting the car, getting the girl, getting the job, getting the boy, having the dream, and you get there and you're miserable?
Yes.
There's a cost.
Yes. Then we chase, then we're chasing the wrong goal based on an illusory sense or misconception of what we truly are, which is we're so identified with our conditioning that from the lens of our conditioning, we're setting and projecting a goal and a life and a purpose that when we get it, it never fulfills us, because what we're seeking is not the thing, we're seeking something else.
And it wasn't really our goal.
It was not our goal.
It wasn't. It was the ego and the validation, having the approval from the world and seeking all these things. And when we seek that from ourselves, then we're whole. But that's the hard thing, right? That's the $1 million question in the act and the purpose of all of this.
Let's not even be all spiritual for a moment. Like, so high level and spiritual on this love podcast, right? Like, because some people might be like, well, I don't know about surrender. Every one of us, we are craving surrender, whether we know it or not. Every single one of us. So if everyone listening, if you just think about, reflect on, and I would say almost everyone listening has probably had this experience, which will prove the power of surrender, that it works. If you think about your most, not even most, but a blissful sexual experience. Right. Yeah. You think about a blissful, I was gonna say most, but let's just keep it any blissful, joyous, ecstatic, sexual experience with your spouse, with your lover, lovemaking, kissing, exchanging, the energy's flowing. It was ecstatic. It was blissful. We want more of that. It was enjoyable. Why was it blissful? Why was it blissful? Just if everyone thinks for a moment, you were in there, that ecstatic, it was blissful because you surrendered.
Yeah.
Because whether you knew it consciously or not, that was a 30-minute, 30-second, 1 minute, 2 hours, 10 hours, however long it was, that experience was a moment of surrender. For one moment, you didn't come to that sexual experience and encounter with your lover with a notepad, an iPad, say, hey, honey, okay, for the next 2 hours, imagine going to your wife, hey, honey, okay, next 2 hours, minute 1, go about 20 centimeters on the bed. Minute 2, you're going to turn to your left. Minute 3, you're going to do this. Minute 4, you're going to turn over. I'm going to do
Left
this.
leg up,
Minute 5,
right leg up.
if that's what it was, it would be hell. All of us would be celibate.
Yeah.
None of us would want to have sex. Why it's so blissful is because we were not in control. We were not trying to force the experience and pre-plan everything and know everything that was going to happen. We got ourselves out of the way. For one moment, we just let go and we allowed the exchange. We allowed our partner to show us. We allowed the moment to show us. We allowed the moment to reveal itself. And we were gone. And the degree to which that was how blissful it was. And so if our sexual encounter is that blissful, why not live that way? Why not live that way? Now, doesn't mean some moments you might not plan, okay, honey, we're gonna have a date tonight. But inside of that context, you allow. And so sex is surrender. That's what makes it blissful. But life is surrender. So it's not just love making, it's life making. And so for me, that's the invitation. What if we lived that way? Why do we drink? We want to drink. Why? Because when we drink, for a brief moment, this egoic sense of meanness gets loosened. And if we get really smashed and drunk, for a brief moment, this egoic sense of me is gone. It's surrender we're seeking.
Liquid courage, right?
Liquid courage. Why do we do cocaine, drugs, whatever it is? Because for a brief moment, a psychedelic, whatever, I surrender. The sense of holding to me, let's go. And so for me, that's the invitation. It's like, this is the magic and the power of surrender. Like daring to live this way, Yeah.
And that leads into everything. That leads into gratitude.
Yes.
That leads into choosing love. That leads into abundance, right? You're on the freeway, sitting in traffic, commuting an hour and a half to your job, and you're just pissed off, right? Oh, here we go again for the rat race. Or if you surrendered to being in traffic, you're grateful you have a job. You can provide for your family. You can have more blissful moments later after the commute and after work. Like, just to make it.
There's a reason that we, because gratitude is so simple, but there's a reason we resist gratitude. And our resistance of gratitude is also our ego's way of trying to maintain control and maintain its separate sense of self. Because if I truly acknowledge the grace that is life, thank you for my breath, thank you for this life, thank you for if we truly acknowledge, we can no longer be a separate sense of self, like it's all me doing it. To truly be grateful requires we acknowledge grace, that there is an intelligence that is unfolding life, and there is an intelligence that is doing it. It's not just me as the doer that is doing everything. And so there's a kind of unconscious mechanism as to why we resist gratitude, because it requires to acknowledge a deeper intelligence. And look, I would just invite people to sit with, if you just sit with your breath, sounds simple, but how often do we just sit with our breath? Like, we're not sitting here right now going, breathe, 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 breathe. It's just happening in spite of us. We don't have to be good people. We could be drug dealers. We could be Pablo Escobar. We could be,
Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy. But breath is still happening. This is grace. And so if we just were to just tune into our body, let's not even get mystical. Let's just get biological. Just tune into the body and notice the breath for a moment. Breath is happening in spite of me, regardless of me, no effort. And just reflect on, what is breathing? What is breathing? I had a smoothie this morning. Maybe someone ate a piece of toast or cereal. How is it that your hand doesn't turn into a freaking cereal? How is it that your foot doesn't turn into a carrot or a salmon, or a steak or whatever you ate? There is an intelligence, trillions and trillions and trillions of cells that are functioning inside of us right now without any effort. How often do we just kind of acknowledge that, tune into that, to just be with that? And I think if we just brought our attention to that dimension of ourselves, it's an opening for surrender. Yeah. It's an opening for gratitude, and it's happening. All that, like, we trust Siri, more than we trust this intelligence of life. Right. We trust Siri more than we trust our soul. And yet, every day the sun shines, the sun shines and the stars come out. And has there ever been a day, I tell my friends, has there ever been a day when you woke up in LA, as an example, 10 a.m., and it was pitch black? Nope. The sun just forgot to come out. It's like, no. And we don't trust. Like, all of existence every day is kind of like a proof. Yeah. We can trust it, but we don't, And so I think if we just start to observe nature, observe the cycles, observe our breath, observe the body, it can start getting us into a deeper relationship with, like, a deeper intelligence, that we are truly, that we are a part of nature. And I think a bit of surrender can open up.
Yeah. One of the things I say, and that's beautiful and well said, is I don't say we're a part of nature. We are a part of nature. And I think where it gets confusing when we don't understand that is that isn't man-made. So we can't rationalize the control of how it works. Like, we built Siri. Men built Siri. Humans, women too. I don't want to just say men, sorry. All humans are doing the thing. So it's like, when it's human-made, we can rationalize control, fake control. Yes. But the sun rises, the sun sets, the stars shine, it rains, all these things aren't in our control. So I think that's probably where we can spiral out. But if we tap in.
Yeah. I was thinking the other day, it just popped into my mind. I was thinking the other day that, and I've seen this with clients, like, even, we started off the conversation talking a bit about ego and conditioning. Even this sort of patterning inside of us of holding on to, like, I'm not enough, and I'm unworthy, and I'm unlovable, and that deep sense of shame that's rooted in that I am not good, that sometimes we feel so hard to let go of, even though we know better, it can feel so difficult to release that belief system. Is a form of control. Yeah. And this is why. Because when we're young, dad was gone, we were abandoned, some things didn't occur that should have happened, our needs weren't met. I'm not enough, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm, all of the stories that we make up, and I can't let this go. It's so interesting, it's sometimes easier, or a form of control, to make it about I'm not enough and I'm unworthy. Because if it's that I'm not enough and I'm unworthy and I'm unlovable and I'm not good enough, I still have some kind of control. Yeah. Because then I can maybe make myself worthy.
Try to fix it,
being more handsome, getting Botox, getting bigger breasts, bigger feet, more money, that Lamborghini. And so that then sends us into an entire life journey of trying to become more Even in spirituality, if I can heal myself more, do more therapy, fix myself, become perfect, then I'm going to finally be enough. That gives me some sense of illusory control. And then we even choose partners in our life that don't really want us, that we try to make them love us, because if I can make them love me, then I'm going to be enough. It's a chase that never ends. But it gives us a sense of illusory control to hold on to this pattern idea. I'm unworthy. I'm not enough. It's a form of control.
Yeah.
Because as children, the alternative is to look at and have to accept, my dad wasn't capable. My mom was, they actually were not capable to give me that love. Now, as a child, that can feel very kind of like helpless to acknowledge that they weren't capable, because if mom and dad weren't capable of giving me that love, then what do I do?
Yeah, and who can?
And then who can? And then, so what we tend to do is go into a control dynamic of, I'm not enough, hold on to that, because now I can do something to be enough, but it never ends.
Buy my way to enoughness.
Yes, it never ends. And so I think if we can begin surrendering our beliefs and the way we're holding on to things, the way we're holding on to our sense of self, it starts to free us.
No, I agree. When you start looking at it, I've never really thought about not feeling enough, not feeling worthy, as a way that I chose control.
It's a form of control.
Yeah.
And so for those that might be struggling with, why do I never feel enough? Why can I not let go? Why am I always seeking? We first have to acknowledge this underlying drive. Because then if you can meet this drive with awareness and with compassion, you know, people often go, how do I begin surrendering? I think if you can just start noticing your patterning, becoming aware of your patterning without judgment, and start noticing and understanding that you are not those beliefs, you are not those thoughts, you are not those stories that you're making up that you've been holding so tightly to. And sometimes part of surrender and letting go is not even so much about like, make myself surrender. Sometimes it's really about acknowledging, meeting yourself where you're at, and acknowledging that, you know, I'm not surrendered right now. And surrendering to the surrender, surrendering to not being surrendered, rather than trying to force the surrender, which creates more resistance. Like, I got to let go. I got to surrender. You know, Dalai Lama surrendered. Eckhart Tolle surrendered. You know, Ruben surrendered. I got to. Sometimes the deeper surrender is to embrace whatever is arising and to meet it, to meet ourselves, to meet our patterns with love. Because when you can see that ego and the mechanism that is resisting has a good intention. It means well. It's trying to protect us. It's just adapted a certain way that's limiting in its expression. Then we can just hold our ego with compassion. And when we can hold it, that space is healing, which can allow the resistance to relax and surrender blossoms.
And to use a metaphor, this just popped into my head. It's like all these sci-fi movies where the AI technology decides that humans are bad for the planet and for each other. So it recodes itself to either kill us or box us or enslave us because they think we are the problem. So that's like what our ego is doing. We're conditioning it, and it's doing these things to protect us, because the AI is really trying to protect what we told it to do, but it's not the right thing. Like, it's at the same time, it's also killing us or not making us better. It just, I don't know why that popped into my head, but no, that is...
Ego wants a fight, you know? And so that's why I tell people, look, ego isn't the problem. Ego is not the enemy. Our relationship with ego is really the key. How we hold it. We all have ego. Ego is just a vehicle that is developed in this 3D experience to navigate this human realm. You know, if we met the most enlightened person, we called out to them, they would turn around and say yes. To do that requires the ego. but it's the sense of being identified
Yeah.
with oneself that's the key. So ego isn't the problem. Our relationship with ego is the key. To me, ego is neutral. And so when we can just meet ego with that neutrality and that compassion and that love, then there's freedom, you know, to play to play inside of this human experience and this body.
And we have the opportunity to update that operating system every so often. Boom, update, hit the update. We can change, we can move forward, we can
evolve.
Exactly. We've talked about the ego and surrendering control, but what is some practical advice for when we get stuck and to get out of that, right? Because it's like, for me, for example, what led me down this path, I was sitting depressed. I didn't like my career path.
Right.
I went and dug in
Right.
and made these choices and became this. But that doesn't mean I don't fall back on old patterns.
Yeah.
I just now have the tools and practice, because this is like going to the gym. Every single day we're practicing this. And there's days where I get stuck. But I could get unstuck quicker because I can realize now we're working on our self-awareness and like, oh, I'm in that pattern again. Yeah. Let me try to get out of this. So do you have any tools or tricks that you use to realize you're stuck?
Yeah.
And then what do you do to kind of balance out or get yourself out?
You often can realize you might be stuck because you will feel some layer or level of pain. Pain that will manifest as discomfort, pain that will manifest as physical pain, pain that will manifest as frustration constantly, or upset or depression. You know, to me, this is a sign that probably something is stuck, as in energy is not flowing. So for me, the pain is always a blessing. The pain is a signal. The pain is simply feedback that something is stuck. The challenge is often when we feel pain as human beings, we've been conditioned to distract from it.
Take the pill.
Take the pill, drink it away, smoke it away, sex it away, drug it away, shop it away, meditate it away, rather than consciously acknowledge the pain so that we can receive the message and the gift of the pain. And so to me, pain is just a messenger. So we have to have the courage and the willingness to face the pain and see what it's telling us. And so one thing that I think we can do as human beings as a whole, not just in the moment of stuckness, is to look at all of the lies that we're telling ourselves. As human beings, for reasons we've talked about, conditioning, we're constantly lying to ourselves.
Yeah, or breaking our own word.
About who we are, about what we feel, about what we want, about our true needs. We say yes when we mean no, which, you know, repeatedly doing that will make us not feel great, which will then keep us stuck. And sometimes when we break our word to ourselves, eventually we lose trust with ourselves. And eventually it's almost like we start losing trust, which loses inner cooperation, which creates an internal anger and rebellion. So our inner self, when we say, I'm going to manifest that thing, we say, fuck you. We don't have, and then we procrastinate and we self-sabotage as an internal upset and resistance is how it manifests. And so we stay in relationships that we know are not aligned because of society. We work jobs that we hate where we are perhaps compromising our integrity. And so if there's a place that we can start, I think if we're willing to just start with the question, like, what lies am I telling myself? Sounds simple, but it's not always easy. What lies am I telling myself? If we can start with the truth, because it's often where we are lying to ourselves that leads to being stuck. Where we're lying to ourselves that ends up leading to pain in some way. The pain is just the manifestation showing us that we are out of integrity with something inside of ourselves. But if we don't listen to that, the stuckness will just continue. There is no transformation without truth. To me, truth is real yoga. Truth is real meditation. Truth is real spirituality. Most of the things that we pray about and meditate about and ask for God's grace about would dissolve, would shift if we started to get real with telling ourselves the truth. What lies am I telling myself? We have to want the truth more than we want what we have. We have to want the truth more than we want what we think we want. To me, the truth is what sets us free. So just sitting with, what am I lying to myself about? Sometimes it's scary to tell ourselves the truth because we're afraid of the consequence of what the hell might happen. What will happen to my relationship if I tell the truth? What will happen to my job if I tell the truth? And so the ego plays this game of confusion. Like, I don't really know. I'm not sure. I'm confused. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know if I'm in love or not. We know.
Yeah.
Deep down, there is a part of us that knows everything. Because I think at that deepest level, we are everything. How many times have maybe in the past, we've been in a relationship with someone, we weren't sure, we were deep in it, but should I stay, should I go? We would speak to our friends, every day about this conundrum of a relationship issue. The moment we broke up, the second we broke up, we called our best friend. It's done, I broke up. I knew it was never gonna work. We knew it, we know.
Yeah.
So we have to have the courage to own that knowing. So I just tell people, take the pressure off of yourself of having to take action. Sometimes that pressure of, oh shit, I'm gonna have to end this relationship, creates the egoic sort of cloud of confusion, which is self-protective mechanism of I don't know. So if you take the pressure off of yourself from having to take action and just start with the truth. What is the truth? I feel stuck. What is this? What is the truth? What is this stuckness trying to tell me? I hate my job. Maybe we've tried to I tell people don't use gratitude as a bypass for the truth. I hate my job. Feel that. Feel the pain that maybe we've been denying and suppressing. Because that gets you into relationship with something deeper. It starts a momentum inside.
Yeah.
I'm not in love with my wife anymore. Scary. You don't have to leave. You don't have to divorce. But just feel I'm not in love. And allow that process to sort of marinate inside of you. That begins the process of transformation. That begins the process of letting go. If we can just start with the truth. You don't have to know where it's going to take you. But if we can't truly acknowledge and own the truth of what's there, we don't stand a chance to get unstuck. Because often we've learned to suppress so much what we truly feel, the pain, the hurt, the guilt, the shame, to preserve our sense of self and life that we're not happy with.
Yeah.
So now we feel stuck. And so I think just starting with the truth. What lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know? What is it costing me? And allowing ourselves to feel the pain starts moving you into relationship with what's there, that you can either start feeling what's true to be able to shift it.
And I think the magic in that, because that's a powerful question and ask and something to do. It's what lies am I telling myself? Everyone should ask themselves that. Yeah. And then sitting in it, that's the trick, because how do we just sit in it without all the stories that are going to come after? Because we're going to bypass the sit and go straight to, I hate my job. If I quit, I'm not going to pay my bills. I'm going to get bankrupt, foreclosed on. I can't feed my family. All that's going to,
and that's what
how do we
us.
Stop that? Yeah.
We have to breathe.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, take the pressure off of yourself of having to take action and just get into relationship with the truth. Yes, I have a kid. I have bills to pay. I can't just quit now. You don't have to quit now. But just acknowledge, I hate my job. It's killing me. And feel that. And you start using that as a acknowledgement, and that the pain of that as a burn inside to start to make you face your fears, to make you face what you need to face. That internal energy of pain can start even moving you into action. That action might not mean you quit your job today, because maybe you got to pay bills. It's not so responsible. But if you don't acknowledge it and you're in denial, you'll just coast and perpetuate your current stuckness forever.
And become more and more miserable.
And then 15 years go by and then we die. Yeah. Rather than just saying, I hate my job. I'm not ready to leave because I'm scared. That's the truth. I'm not ready to leave, but I hate my job. That momentum can then move you into some kind of action to start making a plan. So I'm not ready to leave, but the truth is I hate my job, so I need to do something about it. Now, because you're not in denial, that energy is no longer going towards resisting. It can move towards creating in the direction that you want to go. Many times I speak to people that say, I hate my job, I hate my job. It's been 3 years later, I still hate my job. Then I ask them, what action did you take today? What's one action you took today to moving you in a different direction? Nothing. I've heard you say you hate your job for 3 years. Nothing's changed, clearly.
Yeah.
What have you done every day? The last 3, nothing. And so when we really truly acknowledge the pain, we can use that to start asking ourselves, what one action can I take today that will move me in the direction of where I want to go?
No. And the truth in that is, and what you're saying, and what I hear, and we've had conversations, we all have these friends that are in that job, in that relationship, in that everything, and they don't do anything. The choice of doing nothing is the action. It's not like you're being inactive. That is your choice, right? The choice of not choosing is a choice. All of it. We're always taking action. We're always taking choice. And guess what? You could hate your job and be grateful for it because you have a job, but that doesn't mean you have to love it or stay in it. I think that's where we start getting confused and making these meanings of like, I can't hate my job because I have to be grateful for it. What does that mean? I'm like, well, be grateful for a job and hate it at the same time, but then figure out what you're going to do.
That's the control. That's the control we do have. The control we have is, okay, what action steps am I going to take practically every single day? Maybe it's research. Maybe it's getting a mentor. Maybe it's studying, reading a book. Maybe it's starting to build that business that you're going to do every single day, even if it's 30 minutes a day, because 30 minutes a day over the course of a month, over the course of a year, over the course of 3 years will compound and move you in a totally different direction. It's sometimes we don't take action because we think unless I take like massive action, it's not going to amount to anything.
World peace or nothing.
Sometimes there's a power in the small.
Yeah.
It's those small things we do every single day that compound over time that often seem not to make a big difference, but over the course of 3 years, 2 years puts us in a completely different reality.
Yeah.
3 years, this is 2020, COVID started. 3 years later, either we took the actions or we're still in the same place.
Yeah.
And so we always have a level of control in terms of the actions that we can take. And I think that's where we can start. And that's where we don't have to feel powerless in that sense. But the surrender is, I'm surrendering to the truth. And the truth is, I'm unhappy. Now, what can I do about it?
Yeah.
And that's the action step.
It's easy when you look at it that way. You get all the noise out, all the stories out, surrender to the ego, and you can actually start having these conversations with yourself.
Yeah. Well, what's one action step? I just tell people, what's one action step that you can, what's the next one action step that you can take?
Yeah.
Just start there. That phone call, do that phone call.
And I also think it's really important to realize, start seeking out people that want to take that kind of action also, because we can also try to go get help from someone that isn't in that space.
Yeah.
Doesn't make them wrong, but like it'll keep you there also, right? Let's go commiserate. Let's be victims together. Let's be martyrs together. And we start, look at the circles and who you're running around with, and look for the people that are growing and expanding and taking those courageous questions and asking them to themselves and moving forward, and see where you can start aligning your path out. Because action might just be, get a different mentor to speak to, get a different friend to speak to, go to therapy, go get a coach, go walk by yourself, be by yourself.
It's a step.
Yeah. So this has been beautiful. And I do want to, I have so much we could continue to unpack and be here for hours, but I want to shift a little bit into, what is your journey with love? You know, and I'm talking about, I'm not talking romantic love or relationships, but like when we start choosing love and using love in the context of how I put it, living through love and having it as a choice, where does that fall into the construct of surrendering and choosing and ego and all of that?
Yeah, look, I think what we are is love. It's our true nature. But because of our conditioning, which we spoke about, we've been conditioned often from childhood to believe that we are not lovable as we are. And as a result, we've been conditioned to believe that love is something you need to do to get outside of yourself. Oh, well, be this way. Be more this way. Why can't you be more like your brother? Why can't you be like that person? Why didn't you get all A's, but you got B's, right? And so we start getting conditioned with this sense of love is conditional. And when I do certain things, I get more love from mom and dad. So now love is something I need to do in order to get. And so then we end up spending so much of our lives changing ourselves, being who we think we need to be, living a certain way to try to get love from people outside. And we make other people responsible, you, and you, responsible and the source of our loving. That is suffering. We now think another person is the source of our loving because we've been conditioned that way from childhood.
Yeah.
Oh, when I do this and this, mom loves me, so she's the source of my loving.
We're searching for love
And
outside of ourselves.
we've been conditioned to search for love outside of ourselves. It's not our fault, it's just conditioning.
Yeah.
But it leads to pain. And so I think when we can just begin to realize that love is our nature, it's natural, it's what we are. You know, nothing is really the source of our loving. It's our nature. It's our nature to be love. It's our nature to express love. You can't not be that. Maybe we forgot that we were that. But when we start awakening to the true essence of what we are, which is love, you know, love, then life takes on a whole different context. And I think we can get into the romantic thing if you want, but I think the whole purpose of life is to grow and evolve. We're souls. We incarnate into this human experience in order to learn, to grow, to evolve. Every single experience, every single relationship, everything we go through is really a curriculum for our soul's growth and evolution. And so we incarnate in order to learn, to grow, to evolve, to realize our authentic nature, to realize who we truly are as consciousness, as spiritual beings, and in this simulation that is life, to live and incarnate and demonstrate our soul, our divinity in human form. And the expression of that divinity is love. The expression of God in this human experience is love itself. So on a certain level, we are here to remember the love that we are, and we are here to express that. And that's why we incarnate. To me, life itself is love school. Life, you could say love is really, is why we're here. It's the real religion. You know? It's either we're loving or we're not. Like, you know, I've always said, you know, I grew up in the church. And I would see, as a kid, I'd go to my father's church and I would see people like praising Jesus in church. And they would come out. They were like, Jesus, Jesus. Come out literally in front of the church 2 minutes after service was over. They would be bitching and moaning and, you know, complaining and envying and talking crap about other people. I'm like, what happened to Jesus? What happened to the loving? Because none of the holy texts, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, you know, the Upanishads, the meditation, the psychedelic journey, none of it means anything unless you are truly living love in life with those around you. I think that's, for me, real spirituality. I had this awakening maybe 20 some years ago when I first went to India. And the first time I went to India,
I'm dying to go to India, and I heard some of your stuff where you talked about it.
Anytime you need input, man. When I first went to India, I had all of these utopian ideas of what it was going to be like. I've been to India 38 times.
Wow.
A lot of times. So I know it well. She has blessed me in profound ways. The first time I went, maybe 20 years old, I went to see a dear friend of mine called Dwarkaji. He was an 80-year-old man at the time. He died at 99. I knew him for 19 years. He was a former disciple of Gandhi.
That's a blessing. Wait, you met someone at 80 and you were friends with him till he was 99. To have that kind of friendship with someone at that age, at your age, that's a gift that we don't get.
It was profound. And you know, for me, that's how my life has been. Many of these unplanned moments happening, right? That's why I always tell people the best things in life, we tend not to plan. They just happen,
Yeah.
you know? And so he built an ashram in India for kids. For underprivileged kids who were abandoned. And he would find these kids living in trash cans and trash heaps and roaming the streets and running with cats and dogs. And their parents would take them and throw them in the trash, and people would bring him these children. And he basically raised these kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he built 300 of these schools for these underprivileged kids. Gandhi was one of his teachers. Gandhi's, protege was his main teacher. This was a real man of service. Not just a talker, but a man of service. So I had all of these fancy ideas about being of service. So I decided I'm going to go to India and be like Mother Teresa.
Oh.
And I'm going to spend some time with this guy because it sounded very romantic.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up in Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya is a town in a state called Bihar, which is the poorest state in India. When I bought my train ticket to go to see him in Bihar, in Gaya, in Bodh Gaya, the guy selling me the train ticket in Delhi was like, "You're going to go to Gaya? Are you crazy? I'm not even going to go to..." I mean, at the time, it was that dangerous.
Yeah.
And his ashram is right by the Bodhi tree, the Mahabodhi temple where the Buddha got enlightened. So I show up with all of my grand plans to be the next Mother Teresa. And I'm trying to play with these kids, help these kids. We're cleaning the floor, waking up at 4 a.m., tilling the soil, planting seeds in their farm. It was work. After about 2 weeks, I was so frustrated because these kids were not responding to me. I mean, these kids were not socialized. They had no parents. They were roaming the streets with
Wild dogs.
Wild children. So I'm giving them everything. I'm giving them love. So I think, and they're not being responsive. So I told my dear friend, mentor Dwarkaji, I said, Dwarkaji, I think I'm just going to take 2 weeks. I'm going to go meditate and a retreat by myself by the Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree is, 5 minutes across the street from him. And I'll be back. I'm going to sit by Buddha's statue where he got enlightened, do some meditation. I'll be back. And this is when I would learn my lesson on love too. He looks me in the eyes, man of 80 who's lived some life. And he says, Kute, with so much compassion, he says, Kute, it's fine that you go and meditate by the Bodhi tree next to Buddha's statue. But he said, while you meditate, just make sure your heart doesn't turn to stone. Because right here, and he pointed at these wild children, right here in front of you are living Buddhas, living Christs, simply waiting to be served. And I just sat with that for a moment. I'm like, damn, my heart is in the wrong place. And so for me, love is not words, it's beingness. Love is action. It's not what you say. It's how you live your life. And the ability to recognize the divinity in another. Because when we recognize who we really are, we start connecting to our soul. And when we truly recognize what we truly are beyond our conditioning, we recognize who another is. And we start recognizing that at the deepest level, we are one, that there is a shared beingness. And so you could say love is that recognition of that inherent oneness that we are beyond this seeming sense of separation. And to be able to live that in simple actions in the world, to me, that's love. And so for me, for the longest time, it went from being, I can do this great meditation, I can open my pineal gland, I can see lights, to can I show up and just love this person as a manifestation of God? Can I love this person as a manifestation of myself? Every moment, every day. And so I think every moment of every day, we have invitations and an opportunity to love. Every moment is an opportunity to love and recognize the truth of who someone is. To me, that's love, And sometimes it doesn't look like, and I think this is where a lot of us, we sometimes I don't say get it wrong, but have this misconception that we have to like, you got to do this big thing on the planet.
Overcomplicate it, right?
You got to like save all the children in India. You got to save all the whales in the, in the ocean. You got to save the ocean. You got to save the planet. You got to save the world. You got to reduce the entire carbon footprint of the planet. But we're not even being kind to our wife.
Yeah.
Our neighbor literally next door to us is breaking down and we're like, no, I got to save the whales.
Yeah.
And that's how I was,
Yeah.
I remember being 20 years old. I came back from India and I'm like, I want to do this big thing on the planet. And I would sit every day. I was broke. I would sit every day right outside Air One in the park. There's a park just right off of Beverly, that park, behind the post office. God, show me like the big thing, the big love I can express to the world. And I saw one day, after 3 months of doing this, every day, there was a Russian old lady that would walk to Air One, to her apartment, Air One, to the park, Air One. She would carry all of these groceries. And I'm sitting there going, how can I be of service to the world? How can I make a big difference? With all these fancy preconceived ideas.
Yeah.
And I was just watching her every day going, God, show me what I can do to save the planet. One day I heard this voice that said, get up off of your ass. You want to make a difference? Help this woman.
Yeah.
That's how you can start. So to me, love is just responding to the need in the moment and recognizing that there is no other than yourself.
No, that's perfect. That's well said. I say start local. It's not world peace, People ask me sometimes, they're like, oh, you think love's going to change the world? You're going to paint it everywhere. Like, I'm saying it that way because they're like trolling me online.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, because if one person changes, helps the old lady, that's all that matters is the ripple effect.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change everyone. But if I could change one and one and one and one and one and two and 10, and that becomes 1 billion people. But if I say I'm going to do it and change 1 billion people, dude, that's ego. That's grandiose.
And we don't start.
Yeah.
Many times we don't start.
Yeah.
So I just say, just start. We incarnate into this human form to transmit love.
No, but that's beautiful.
Otherwise, we just stay up in the heavenly realm somewhere in the 15th dimension and just transcend in utopia.
Yeah.
We incarnate to recognize we're love, to live love, to be love. That's why we're here. And if people might be saying, but I don't know if I could, then just start with yourself. Because if we can start with ourselves, just being a bit more kind
Look in the mirror
to ourselves, have a bit more mercy, have a bit more compassion, knowing that we've done the best we can do, we're doing the best we can do, and just to be a bit more kind, we will bring world peace, because the world is a mirror manifestation of our consciousness. The total consciousness of all 8 billion of us combined is projected out into the world in this movie called Life. And then we look at, let's say, Russia, Ukraine, Africa, what have you. Oh my God, wars on the planet. Yeah, but we don't look at the war inside of my own mind.
Yeah.
How do I drop bombs of self-hatred every day, judging myself harshly every day? Should be this, should be that. That is war inside. So if we can even just say, I'm going to be a bit more kind to myself today, a bit more compassionate to myself today. As we shift that, we shift the projection in the movie of life.
And that's how we change the world.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. No, I say we're on this planet to be love, to love and be loved, period. Let's not confuse it. Everything else falls under that. So we're coming up to the end. I have two questions. One's the question that I always end with.
Ooh.
But this one question I have left is, can you share a personal experience where you felt like you were failing yourself or not living up to your own potential? And how did you overcome that? Because 30 years of doing this, there has to be some doubt that has crept in, right? So has there been a moment that's like, I can't do this anymore, or I'm failing myself, or?
I think there've been many moments where I wanted to give up, especially in the beginning, because it was hard, it was difficult. In fact, the first time I went to India, there've been many moments along the way, but the first time I went to India, I was a very young man, and I gave up. I mean, long story short, I was pitching this TV show, wanted to be the next Oprah. You know, had all of these grand ideas now. I'm going to take personal growth. You know, it's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to translate it into a TV talk show. And I pitched everyone, man. I mean, I found Steven Spielberg on the street. I found agent after agent, William Morris. See, I found these people, knocked on their doors, got kicked out of their offices. You got kicked out of their... I mean, it was crazy. And I remember one time, I'm going to condense the story, but I had an opportunity to be repped by these managers. These guys managed Michael Jackson, Mariah Carey, Leonardo DiCaprio. And I went home. They basically said, go home, sign the contract, and come back. And I went home. And all I heard inside of me was no. My guidance said no. I'm thinking to myself, shit. My guidance is saying no. And that's when, and so I told them, no, I'm not going to sign with you. They said, you're crazy, because they were like, we're going to make you a star, blah, blah, blah. But this guidance never failed me. And this guidance said, no, it was just a no. I listened, but it was so depressing. And so like, I was so mad. And I just gave up. I basically threw my arms up to the universe and I said, I don't know what the hell you want from me anymore, life. Because I have tried everything to manifest what I think my life should be. And it's not working. It hasn't happened. So I don't know. And I basically gave up and I said, I am leaving America. Put everything in storage. Broke up with my girlfriend. Blew everything up. Gave up. I'm like, I'm not coming back until I find certain answers. And I kind of gave up. And I remember getting to a point where I said, if I'm meant to clean the streets, and that's my path, then let me know, because I don't know. And I got clear. I got a sense of what my purpose was. And I think it was because I got a clear sense of what my true purpose was. And for me, it was never about money. A lot of people get into personal growth today because it's like, oh, money, make money, have it. Yeah. For me, I didn't give a damn about money. I just wanted to help people. And so I got a vision for what my purpose in life was. And I came back to America and I started with this pure intent to help a person. And it grew and it evolved. And even during the times I felt like, this is hard, I want to give up. I think because the clarity of that deeper purpose and mission has been there and has been true, that's what kept me going. That's what moved me through, because it wasn't based on making money. It wasn't based on being famous. It wasn't based on
fixing problems,
having TikTok followers. It was based on, I feel like there is a path that my soul is uniquely here to unfold and to serve. And my job is to listen to that and share those gifts, and trusting that there are souls that are waiting to receive those gifts. And I've just done my best to be obedient to that. And so for me, the process hasn't been measuring myself on the goal line. You know, often in our culture today, we define success as the goal line. Yeah. You achieved it, you didn't achieve it. I'm going to give up because I didn't achieve it after a certain amount of years. For me, the real measure of success has been the soul line. The soul line is really the degree to which I'm learning, growing, and evolving, learning the lessons for why my soul attracted that experience and situation in the first place. So even when it was challenging, even when the heartbreak and the thing didn't work out, when I was able to just look at myself from the lens of soul and life as a school and sit with, okay, what am I learning? How am I growing? How am I evolving? Am I learning the energetic karmic lesson for why I'm in this situation? I think for me, if I could say, yeah, I am growing and evolving, I am learning, that was success.
Yeah.
And that was the metric that even through the difficult times where things were hard and up and down, that's what kept me moving.
That's a large, big moment of surrender.
Yeah.
Previous to this book, years ahead of this time, and who you are now. That was a moment of surrender where you're like, I gave up. No, you surrendered.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Even the book, The Magic of Surrender, was not the book I wanted to write. It was not the book I planned to write. I had a whiteboard like this with a plan of the book I thought I should. I had 50 ideas of like, I'm gonna decode like the master class of best-selling books out there, and I had 50 ideas and catchphrases and subtitles, and I'm gonna like reverse engineer a mega hit bestseller, you know, the subtle art of not giving the magical art, and brilliant ideas.
Yeah.
But none of those felt authentic. If I was honest, I could have lied, but if I was honest, none of those felt true, in alignment. The only word was this little sentence at the bottom that said surrender. And I thought, oh shit, that's the book. I felt the energy of the book, that the book had a soul of its own. And I resisted, but I had to surrender to the book about surrender, and that the book had a soul of its own. And so for me, a key has always been to not compromise your soul. When you compromise your soul, you never win, even when you achieve what you're going after.
Yeah.
But when you're obedient to your soul, you always win, regardless of what happens. And so the deeper I've gone in my evolution, this might sound strange, but the deeper I go, the less choice I feel I have. The deeper I go, the more I surrender, the less choice I feel I have, the freer I am.
That makes perfect sense.
The more in ego we are, the more choice we think we have. The more
less focus and more focus.
Yes.
You know, and there's a business principle that can tie to that as a metaphor. But no, that's true. The deeper you go, the less choice you have, because the more focused you actually are, and you're tapped in and you're tuned in.
Yes.
You're less.
You could say your personal will and the highest impulse of life become one.
Yeah.
Not my will, but thy will. But thy will becomes your will, because thy and my are really the same.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's the freedom. And that's when I see Jesus on the cross, when I see Mandela in prison, when I see Gandhi, they surrendered. They were free, you know. And I think when we evolve, as we evolve, there's things that we used to be able to do we can't do anymore. We could, but if we're going to truly surrender, like, we can't smoke that. We can't drink that. We can't hang out that. It's just not in alignment with our soul's evolution anymore.
No, I can
and
relate.
that's the surrender. You're surrendering to your soul. And that's the freedom.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's surrender. Beautiful. Last and final question. We're here at the end. This is the question I ask to wrap the show. And there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. How do you define living a life through love?
How do I define living a life through love? I would say that living a life through love is living a life that is in service to a purpose, in service to something bigger than yourself. Because I think when you're truly in service, true service to others, you realize that your focus isn't on yourself. You transcend yourself. And there are no others. There's only love. And so I think when we're truly being of service, we're loving.
Yeah.
I think that's what life is about. You might get everything you thought you wanted, but at some point, you will be dissatisfied.
Yeah.
Elon Musk can only wear one pair of underpants at one time.
Yeah.
Can only drive one car at one time.
Yeah.
You know, you can only eat one meal at one time. It's limited. And so I think when we're constantly focused on ourselves, it will always reach a point of dissatisfaction. You eat your favorite meal that you love every day, give it a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, you're going to be sick of it. But I think when we're truly being of service, we're going beyond ourselves. Yeah. And when we go beyond ourselves, our sense of self extends and expands. And there's just one. And I think that's the love, that's the freedom, you know, that's the fulfillment that's there. When we're giving, when we're living, when we're serving.
Let's be in service and surrender.
Yes.
Thank you, Kute.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate you for this conversation, for joining us on the show today. And where can the audience find you?
A couple of ways. The Magic of Surrender book. It's available on Amazon on paperback. Very simple. The Magic of Surrender, Finding the Courage to Let Go. My main website, kuteblackson.com. Everything's there. Twice a year, I do a very special deep dive transformational event to Bali. 2023 is my last year. People can find out more www.boundlessblissbali.com. The next event is July the 28th through August the 8th.
It's coming up.
Instagram, Kute Blackson. Facebook, Kute Love Now.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Live Through Love. If you love this episode, you'll love this episode.